This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
PTBN Pop Experience, come on down. You are here for another edition of Making Mount Rushmore here on the Pop Feed. I am not Andy Atherton, the man you normally hear in the moderator chair. I am, in fact, Steve Riddle, and I want to thank Andy for allowing me to step into the moderator seat for this episode. And I think it's going to be a fun one because we are going to be talking game shows and reality competitions. And I have a great panel of gentlemen here to go along the journey with me. We actually have a trio of debuts, believe it or not. 3 guys who have never been on the show before, but they are very recognizable here on the Pop Feed. And I will bring them in right now. First, these 2 gentlemen you can hear constantly here on the Pop Feed, as they are part of the 2 of great shows here. It Was a Thing on TV and Into the Spideyverse. Let's first bring in Mr. Chico Alexander. Chico, how are you, sir?
Doing well, sir. Hope you are.
I'm doing good. Glad to have you on. Are you excited?
Oh, yeah. I am thrilled. I've been watching game shows all my life, and I have thoughts, sir. I have thoughts.
I'm sure you do, as I'm sure does your usual co-host on those 2 shows I mentioned, Mr. Mike Klauss. Mike, how are you?
Hi there. Pretty good. No, I don't have the same enthusiasm as Chico. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You know, sometimes these topics aren't everybody's cup of tea, but I'm sure you'll do great.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Thanks for inviting me aboard.
No problem. And the third man making his debut is a voice very well recognized here on the Pop Feed. He was one of the co-hosts of PTBN Trivia Night, which I believe is either wrapped up or is about to wrap up. And you can also hear him over on the North-South Connection feed as part of Rank and File. It is, as Scott Crisco affectionately calls him, the Motor City Man, Mr. Jordan Duncan. Jordan, how are you?
I'm doing good, and I'll just be the third bear here. I have no enthusiasm whatsoever. So, super enthused, not so enthused. I'm barely awake. No, that's not true. I'm always happy to come on and chat.
That's good to hear, and this is going to be a great episode. But unfortunately, we do have a little bit of it's a little sad here because originally set for the show as well was another great gentleman, Calvin Crowell. But for those of you who are, of course, part of the family, know that he sadly passed away recently, very tragically. So our thoughts and prayers obviously go to him, his family, and his friends. But he did want to be. He was originally set to be on the show tonight. So stepping in as proxy for Calvin is the man you usually hear in the moderator seat, but he has taken a panelist role tonight. And that is, of course, Mr. Andy Atherton. Andy, how are you, sir?
I am doing great, Steve, and you're doing a great job so far. Please make sure the chair gets put back to the setting I like it at, and the level and all that stuff. I really appreciate it. But I'm really looking forward to you moderating the show. We do co-host the show together, so I know you're going to do a great job. But in terms of why I'm here, originally I was not planning to be on mic tonight. I was just going to be on headphones and produce the show from behind the scenes. But our dear friend Calvin, who had just recently started being a regular panelist on the show, unfortunately, yes, did pass away suddenly a few days ago. But he did send us a list for the show, and it's very Calvin. If you guys know him at all or have heard him on any shows, I seriously suggest that you look up the Talkin' Pop episode on the Jenny Position feed that he was on. It's entertainment. Let me just put it to you that way. The guy was full of life, full of stories, and was just an interesting fella and a great loyal member of Place to Be Nation. And I'm hoping to do his list justice tonight. So this episode is dedicated to him. I know he's listening somewhere, somehow, and we're going to have fun tonight, and he's here in spirit. So, Steve, take it away.
Thank you, Andy. And like you said, yes, Calvin is here with us in spirit, and I'm sure he will be very happy of the job that we do tonight. So as I mentioned, the first half here of our show will be focused on TV game shows. We all know them. We see various people go on to these things to win various prizes and cash. We cheer when they win. We cringe when they lose. We laugh whenever they make stupid mistakes and say we could do better than them. We, of course, know that each show has its memorable host. We know them, we love them, and we are looking forward to seeing what everyone has on the list. So we will start off with Mr. Alexander. If you would please give us the first entry on your Making Mount Rushmore of game shows.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and rip off the Band-Aid, and I'm going to rip off the Band-Aid, and fun fact, I was actually on Jeopardy 3 years ago, and you know, as a point of disclaimer, I may be a little bit biased, so it's going to be hard to be unbiased when I suggest this name, so I'm not even going to bother. Alex Trebek.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's definitely a great pick there. Do you have any good memories of being on the show?
Oh, I just remember that day when I was taping the show. It was just like the most fun I've had in a long time, and it was just the greatest experience I've had. All of the people in Jeopardy were just so welcoming and so accommodating, and I thank God for all of them. So, yeah.
Well, that is definitely great to hear. I made a list as well for the show, and I had it on mine as well. Jeopardy's just one of those shows that everyone just knows. You know, it's been a primetime staple for so long, and you know, it's one of the few shows where the format's so unique, where you're given an answer, you have to give a question to respond, and like you said, when you think of Jeopardy, the first guy you think of is Alex Trebek, and it's just one of those wonderful shows that you just always know and you love. And
Indeed.
Mike had it on his list as well.
Yes, I did. I haven't gotten as far as Chico has on that show, but I have gotten past the test. I've gotten to the interview stage, and it's just been a part of my life essentially for the last 37 years, or going on 37 years. And it's been a staple in both my house proper that I own now, and also when I was growing up. 7 o'clock was Wheel of Fortune, 7:30 was Jeopardy. And we've had this debate, me and Greg and Chico, on our show. And in my opinion, that's like the organic schedule. You have Wheel of Fortune at 7, which is sort of the appetizer to the hardcore trivia, the thinking man's game. Not to diminish Wheel of Fortune's abilities or the talent level of the people on it, but it's like the appetizer before the main course. And Chico and Greg have argued with me to the bitter end about this, because in their markets, it's Jeopardy first and then Wheel of Fortune, and that just doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe, again, because for 37 years, it's been Wheel of Fortune and then Jeopardy.
Well, for 37 years on my end, it's been Wheel of Fortune after Jeopardy.
Well, your market is wrong. I'm sorry.
Okay, my market is an ABC O&O. Are you telling me that the same company responsible for Iron Man is wrong?
Yes.
I have to agree with Chico and Greg, because I'm from New York.
Thank you.
It's New York is what makes the world go around, basically. I'm sorry, in the television world, and it's Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, case closed. Sorry.
Thanks for
I'm
the
not
support
speaking for
there.
Calvin, but I'm sure
Jeez.
Calvin would agree with me because he's from New Jersey.
Can I chime in from Detroit then?
Okay.
It goes Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, and
Okay, I'm ready to leave. I'm sick of this already.
Wheel of Fortune.
He just agreed with you, dude.
I'm with you, man. Wheel of Fortune.
Oh, Wheel of Fortune. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I must have had my ears turned off. You said you agreed with Chico. I'm sorry. You agreed with
Andy
me
did.
then.
Andy agreed.
Okay.
Hey, brother.
Well, good. I'm glad I have somebody on my side.
That's right. We got to fight the good fight.
Indeed.
Yeah, you fight that good fight. I'm going to sit here and watch the good stuff before Wheel of Fortune.
and then watch some other panelist here doesn't have either of those schedules. They have Wheel of Fortune at, say, 7:30 or 6:30, but Jeopardy is on at, like, 11 a.m. like it is in Meridian, Mississippi.
Yeah. Some monster who only watches daytime Jeopardy.
I can feel the heat coming off of Chico's forehead from here.
Well, not really. Now that I think about it, not really, because if you remember back in the old days of Art Fleming, Jeopardy was lunchtime television.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I've also made the argument about the parallel between the southern states and their book learning and trivia abilities. You don't hear of many people from Mississippi being on Jeopardy.
Well, no, you really don't.
No, North Carolina's cool, but once you get to Mississippi, Alabama, where the gene pool's a little tainted, yes.
Oh.
And I say that with relatives down there, so hey, family.
All right. Well, this is.
Hey, Steve, would you like me to chime in with one of my picks?
Yeah, Andy's never gonna let me host the show again.
Well, I feel bad that
too,
you
just so you know.
Go of it on the first one, but Calvin had Jeopardy as well.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, and I agree with that because I watch it. I've gotten into watching it every night after not having watched it for a number of years, and it's funny too. Is like my kids, my girlfriend, they all give me the same look. Like, how did you know that? I'm like, well, I kind of work on the History Channel and stuff like that, so I absorb some stuff from all those shows I watched. I don't know, but yeah, it's definitely deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore of game shows.
Oh yeah, I think when you think game shows, Jeopardy is that, and maybe one of my other ones are like the first two that come to mind for most people. My other one is very different than Jeopardy, but Jeopardy it's classic trivia, and what's cool about it is it's not like some of these game shows are so simple that they're not entertaining to watch, whereas Jeopardy's challenging. Sometimes you can watch Jeopardy and feel pretty dumb because you don't know, but then you'll hit one of those $2,000 questions that stumps everybody and you feel really smart, so it's kind of it's awesome. For me, first round Jeopardy, I go in there, I'm like, I'm killing it. And then Double Jeopardy comes, and I'm like, I'm stupid, and I need to read more. And then Final Jeopardy is where I make or break in if I did good in the episode or not.
Sorry. So, well, this has been a fun episode so far. But yes, that was our first sweep. Everybody had it on their list. So, Mike, go ahead and give us another entry on your Mount Rushmore of game shows.
Okay, well, we just talked about it. It's the partner show to Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune. And this one was actually essentially my fourth choice. I was struggling between three different shows in that fourth position. And with Apollo, I'll mention my honorable mentions later on, but I think it says a lot when a show that debuted in the daytime 46 and a half years ago, January of 1975, is still on the air, even though one of the big things that Sony does is they don't acknowledge their daytime past. So when they talk about their 37th or 38th year, they're talking about syndication. They're not talking about those first 8 years when they're on NBC. But Wheel of Fortune has adapted for the times, love it or hate it. The game stays fresh, even though probably not exaggerating too much, half the wheel nowadays is full of special wedges or prizes or what have you. It's not as natural, as organic as it was, say, 20, 25 years ago. But it stays fresh, and Vanna, in spite of being 63, 64 years old, treats the game like she's still, in her 30s or 40s. She's timeless, and so is Pat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. I had it as an honorable mention. It's just when you think of nighttime game shows, like you said, just you think Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, regardless of who comes first, you're always gonna remember you have Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, Alex Trebek, Pat Sajak, everything surrounding them. Chico, you had it on your Mount Rushmore as well. Do you have anything else to add?
Just that Pat and Vanna have dueling pictures of Dorian Gray in their attic, and that's why they don't age. And so does the show, because if you think about it, the show as it is now is the same show that it was 30 some odd years ago. And Wheel of Fortune is timeless. It's one of those shows that everybody knows. Just like Jeopardy is one of those shows everybody knows. Wheel of Fortune is one of those shows that everybody knows. So, yeah.
Jordan, it was an honorable mention for you.
Yeah, kind of echo what everybody else says. I think they go together. It kind of was like my fifth, if I could have ranked five. And for me, I have personal memories. I spent a lot of time when I was a kid at my grandma's house, growing up in evenings, like if my parents worked and stuff. And I remember watching Wheel with Grandma. And it's kind of cool because it's a show that kids like. You hear a lot of stories like that with Jeopardy too, about people who grew up watching it with their dad or their grandfather or something like that. But a kid can like beat an adult at Wheel of Fortune. It's basically just Hangman. So it's kind of interesting in that sense that it's accessible for anyone to play along and maybe beat the contestants at home or things like that. And just to echo, I think Pat Sajak is timeless, as is Vanna. I feel like maybe Vanna gets that treatment more, but Pat Sajak is a national treasure. He might be one of my favorite game show hosts of all time. It just missed my list. Nothing against it or anything. I think it's a great show and it's stood the test of time. I wouldn't be against if they brought back the like the showcase prizes where you have to spend your money right then and there on the different gifts on stage. I'll spend $300 on that lamp, Pat. That'd be kind of fun.
Was not on Calvin's list, but Andy, do you have anything to add about Wheel of Fortune?
It's something I watched when I lived at home because we had a TV in the kitchen, so it was always Jeopardy then Wheel of Fortune. Wheel of Fortune was like dessert, it was like because there's like I can relax and I really don't have to think much anymore. It's not like a competition with my family and I. It's fine for what it is. It's not a show that I watch as much anymore because there's so much going on. I loved it like when I was younger, when I was a kid, and they would win money, and then they would go into this room and they'd be flying around the camera like, oh, what do you want? I want this, Jaguar that's made out of ceramic that goes in your living room, and this chair that's an egg and stuff like that. Yeah. That was fun for me. But yeah, Wheel of Fortune, I see that it has a place, but it wouldn't make my list if I had done one.
Okay. Well, Andy, if you could please give us another entry on Calvin's list.
I'm going to go with one that I don't think anybody else has, which is Hollywood Squares, which I can understand why he likes that. It depends on it's had so many incarnations that you have the Peter, I think it was Peter Marshall one. You had the John Davidson one, which is probably what everybody knows. I started watching it when I was a kid, so that was like the Paul Lynde days. You had like Waylon Flowers and Madam, all those kind of like people that Charles Nelson Riley who made
you sound cultured.
Yeah. Oh well, don't you know? All by yourself. That made careers out of being game show panelists. Britt Summers, all of those people, and it's like I like that, but it became like seemed like it was a badge of honor to be the center square at some point. Like only the best got him, and then along came the 80s, or I think it was more like the late 80s. You had the John Davidson hosted one, and then all of a sudden, to get I think Joan Rivers on the show, they gave her the center square permanently, and then eventually it became Whoopi Goldberg when she became an EP on it. Jim J. Bullock got the far left corner, I think it was up northwest corner. He got then Shadow Stevens, the friggin' announcer, got his own square. And the term celebrity got used very loosely, but it does have a place though for those. Because we could have done a Mount Rushmore on game shows that just had celebrity involvement, there's so many of those, but I think this one definitely deserves to be on there. I could see why he picked it one.
Mm-hmm. Jordan, you have anything to add about Hollywood Squares?
Yeah, did not make my list. To be honest, I didn't really think about it. It's a show that I've watched before. I wouldn't say that I was a adamant fan of it. Nothing against it. I guess my critique of it would be, in the genre of game shows where kind of the celebrities are the ones that do the answering and then the contestants just kind of agree. I think there's much better versions of that, like Match Game, stuff like that. I'd much rather watch Match Game than Hollywood Squares.
Okay. Chico?
Yeah, Hollywood Squares didn't make my list either. I mean, it's a really good show, but at the same time, it's full of aplomb. I mean, it's the product of its time, and it's also a product of the people you get to actually do the show. And it's one of those shows that ages poorly, even as it goes on in whatever run it goes on. I mean, the show in 1998 was probably as good as it was going to get certainly better than the show in 2004. The show in 1969 is certainly better than the show in 1980. The show in 1986 is better than the show in 1989. And again, props to the current rights holder, CBS. They do the whole hip hop squares, and it's really, really popular. And yet, nobody seems to realize that they're part of a long-standing game show heritage. Sneaky, don't you think?
It is indeed. Mike, anything to add?
This was actually sort of on my second tier of honorable mentions that I didn't send in. There were a couple of shows. Actually, the other one that was like a second tier honorable mention was Match Game as well. Just because the humor is really, in both shows, is really timeless. You need to remember that back in the 70s, there were a couple of books released regarding Hollywood Squares, just full of the zingers, the one-liners that the celebrities gave. And even an album, a 33 1/3 record album was released, I want to say it was about 1974-ish. And believe it or not, that's the only album I have in my collection. I got a record player from a girlfriend, or well, an ex-girlfriend at this point, last year just to play it, even though it's more of a something I don't want to necessarily touch. But it's just timeless. The humor, even though back in the 60s and 70s, a lot of what was said back then wouldn't fly nowadays. It's still hilarious, and especially when you have Paul Lynde and Peter Marshall being the ultimate straight man, figuratively and literally, when you're talking about Paul Lynde. That dynamic was just absolutely amazing. And to a lesser extent in the 80s, you had the same with Joan Rivers and Jim J. Bullock and some of the other celebrities. And 98, I can't really say that much about the 90s and 2000s version because my market literally had it for like 13 weeks. It had it in the first 13 weeks in 1998. Then once it got to like Christmas of 98, nope, off the schedule. Never saw it again.
Very interesting.
Cleveland sucks when it comes to game shows.
All right. We are up to Jordan. Give us another entry on your Mount Rushmore of game shows, please.
Sure. So I mentioned when I said Jeopardy, two came to mind. Jeopardy's the first. The other one is The Price is Right. I think it's a tradition for American school children. It's a rite of passage to skip school at some age, stay home, and watch The Price is Right when you should be in math class. Bob Barker specifically, Price is Right. I mean, I don't have a problem with Drew Carey. I've watched it here and there, but Bob Barker, of course, was growing up. And it's almost like a cheat because it's a bunch of little game shows within a game show. You know, it's like a game show where a bunch of people play different games. And the different games vary in skill level and luck. A lot of them are luck-based. Knowledge of prices of things at the supermarket, which always seemed a little more expensive than I would expect them to be, including the prizes that they win. You know, you've got the showcase models, you've got the goofy prizes that no one would ever want, like a hot dog cart or a catamaran, as Homer Simpson would say, a poorly built catamaran. But yeah, for me, when I think game shows, Jeopardy and Price is Right, which couldn't really be further from each other in terms of what they're presenting. Jeopardy is a no-nonsense trivia that can get really challenging, whereas The Price is Right, some drunk college kid can just luck into everything and punch through a hole and win $10,000, or drop a Plinko chip and win $10,000 and spin a wheel and can walk out of there with a whole lot of money in his pocket. But I think Price is Right relies heavily on the host interacting with the contestants. It's a show that I always thought would be fun to go on. I've never tried or anything. I don't think I ever will try, but it's just fun, and that's why I ranked it, because when I think game shows, that's the first one that pops in my mind. It's fun. I think it's timeless. I could see that show going on and on, really forever. I would say age well. It doesn't even really age. I mean, Steve Willie, who is a familiar voice, loves in his downtime to watch The Price is Right channel on Pluto, just a channel of old Price is Right episodes. He will often Snapchat me screenshots of Barbara in 1987 going for a Honda or something like that. So it's a show that, you can jump in at any time. It's a really fun show for me.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I had it on my list as well, and like you said, it's just such a timeless staple. I think a lot of people don't remember it's been around since the mid '50s.
Yeah.
It started with Bill Cullen as the host, but obviously everyone remembers when it started with Bob Barker in '72, and it was called The New Price is Right originally before The New was eventually dropped. And yeah, it's just such a fun. Just seems like such a fun atmosphere to be a part of, and I think a lot of that is Bob when he was hosting. He just was so good at his job and really made you get behind each contestant. And I will say, I know Drew Carey got crapped on a lot early on when he kind of took over the reins, but I think he's done a very admirable job taking over as the host of the show. And I think he knew he wasn't going to be Bob Barker.
Sure.
He tried to take over the show and just be himself. And like I said, it's kind of, I think, struggled a bit early on, but once he found his footing, he's definitely been a real good host for the show. Mm-hmm. Chico, you had it on your Mount Rushmore as well.
I did have it on my Mount Rushmore, and there's something to be said when like you said, Price is Right has been around since the 50s, and fun fact, one of the only 2 game shows to produce a new episode a decade since the 50s. There have been new episodes in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020. The other one, to tell the truth, also not on my list, but whatever. Anywho, it's one of those shows that's absolutely timeless. Yes, it's not the show that it was in the 50s or the 60s, but it has endeared itself for almost 50 years now in its current iterations with its variety of games and variety of players. And it's one of those shows you just grow up watching, and it just makes and just holds onto your soul like I don't know. It's just familiar. That's what it is. It's familiar.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know what? People like to give Drew Carey a hard time. Screw that. Drew Carey holds his own just fine. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you had it on your list as well.
Yes, I did. I don't know what else to say that hasn't been said. Yes, it's like a piece of Americana. It's something that, like, literally anybody who's under the age of 65 has grown up with. Again, talking about sick days or during summer when you're off of school. I will add, I've been to a number of shows that were hosted by Bob Barker, and I've also been to a number of Drew Carey episodes. And I had significantly more fun at the Drew Carey episodes. Now, maybe that's because when I went to the Barker shows, the earliest was in 2001, so that was about 6 years before he retired. And so he was getting up in age at that point. He would have been in his late 70s. And he got to be a little crotchety, a little, I don't want to say uncomfortable being around, but he would just, during the breaks, go to the side, relax, while Drew Carey, when the cameras are off, he's interacting with the audience. It's almost like going to a comedy show with Drew Carey. It is so hilarious, so much fun. And again, I admit there's a little bit of Cleveland bias there because Drew is a fellow Clevelander, but he's done a great job, especially given what we've been through the last 18 or so months with the pandemic. But I think the show could live on forever unless they pick whoever Drew's replacement is in 15 or 20 years or what have you. Unless they totally blow that, this could be like a legacy show that goes on forever. And if it doesn't go on forever, it could be on Pluto TV forever.
Mm-hmm. Andy, anything to add?
there is a show on another feed called You Heard of Pluto. Just saying. Putting out there for anybody who's listening. No, but Price is Right definitely deserves to be on Mount Rushmore. It did not make Calvin's list. Had I done a list, it would have made mine. Like Jordan said, I mean, my go-to fake sickness was an earache, because it usually didn't get you a trip to the doctor. Usually my mother would put some kind of liquid on a cotton ball, put it in my ear, and I literally would roll over and go to sleep till Price is Right started at 11 o'clock. Grew up with Bob, Barker's Beauties. They were quite fetching back in the 80s, I'm sure, and they still are. But we grew up with Holly, I think Diane and Janice, I think were them. The games, that's one thing about The Price is Right. It was always different because, you had the Showcase Showdown and you had the wheel. But you always wanted to have a show like, oh, I hope they do Plinko today. I hope they do Cliffhanger today. Audio. I mean, it was, so much interaction and the crowd interaction with is it higher or lower? Is it the front or back part of the number? The one where they had to putt the golf, and there were just so many fun games, and there are so many great moments. I mean, there's years ago, there was a biography on Bob Barker. I don't think it's aired in quite some time. It was on Biography Channel and A&E, and so many moments were shown because of how excited the contestants would get, and they basically would almost attack Bob Barker and want to hug him and everything like that, and how big a deal it was when he stopped coloring his hair. It was like a cultural phenomenon. It just showed what an effect that show had, and like Mike said, this show could go on forever, pending they picked the right person after Drew. So good pick.
I agree. All right, I'm going to mention one of my picks here, and this was a personal pick. My last two were more personal. This was a show I really enjoyed when I was little, and that's Press Your Luck. Just another really fun show and such a great atmosphere. You had the big board, and how all the square going around, and the contestants waiting to see where they were going to land. And obviously, to me, the thing that really put the show over was the host. I thought that Pierre Tamarkin is just such a great voice for that show. Rooting on the contestants, keeping everything in line. And of course, when you talk Press Your Luck, you of course got to talk about the whammies. One of the few game shows that had an animated kind of bad guy to take a contestant's money away whenever they hit on it. And obviously, when you ask people about Press Your Luck, they'll obviously mention the legendary time when an unknown ice cream truck driver named Michael Larson came on the show and completely broke the system and walked away with well over $100,000 in cash and prizes. Still, honestly, remains one of the most memorable moments in the history of game shows. And you had the later versions. You had the Whammy, the all-new Press Your Luck in the 2000s, and the most recent years you had the revival on I think it was NBC with Elizabeth Banks as the host. But when
ABC.
ABC, thank you. But when it comes to really fun game shows, Press Your Luck, I think, definitely belongs up on the list. And Jordan, you had it as an honorable mention.
I did, for almost exactly the same reasons you listed, and you even specifically said a childhood favorite. And for me, that's the show that I liked watching as a kid, and it had to be probably because of the whammies. Would be my guess, and it's such a luck-based game, and that's why the Michael Larson story is kind of so fascinating, is that he just memorized the system and took the luck out of it and just came out and won. It's one of those shows where you can be the winner of the episode and walk away with absolutely nothing, which I think is kind of interesting. Some game shows do that. Some do, some don't. But yeah, just a fun show from my childhood. Everybody wants big bucks, big bucks, big bucks. No whammies, no whammies. Stop. And I actually just watched the Elizabeth Banks one a couple days ago, and I thought it was interesting that the whammy animations still look like right out of the 80s. Like, you'd think the animation would be a little more like Pixar, like a little bit more updated or clean, and they still look kind of crudely drawn, and it just felt like right back in the 80s as I was watching. But yeah, for me, it was more of a childhood thing, so that's why I listed it as an honorable mention, and it's just not as strong as the ones that did make my list.
Are they still doing the 80s icons though, like the Boy George and Michael Jackson whammies that they used to have? I remember those.
I didn't watch the whole episode. I was like, I turned it on, I got up, I was making some food, and I noticed the guy just kept avoiding the whammies, and he finally got one. But so I don't know if they did or not.
Yeah, what I love about Press Your Luck, and it would have made my list if I had done one, is that how always had a very exciting finish because it didn't matter how far apart first and second place were. They always would pass, and if you whammied, you were done. Like, and the other guy could have like $2, you could still win the damn game. I mean, and the value of like big bucks, no whammies. The guy that did that cheated. Yeah, I believe he taped a bunch of episodes on his VCR and figured out there were 5 basic patterns that they followed, and he just had to figure out, like, he memorized them all, and then he could spy it like pretty much right away which one it was. And Peter Tamarkin, his story is such a sad one because he was into, I believe he was doing charity work, and he crashed his own plane. He was taking supplies or something, and he crashed. I think it was right off the coast of California, and unfortunately passed away. But he was if we did game show hosts, he would definitely be on there as well.
Chico, anything to add?
No, you pretty much nailed it. It didn't make my list, but again, it's like a really, really solid, really fun half hour. Now, a really solid, really fun full hour. Thanks, ABC. And again, it's no failing that it didn't make my list. It's just I only got 4 slots. One of the best things about did it was that they made it absolutely, and then if they could make it into an hour-long show, my golly, these totally worked. So yeah.
Hey, Mike, anything to add?
You can edit this out, but I could not hear a word Chico said. I don't know if his connection's bad or...
It cut on me a little bit. I thought he hit a whammy. So
I think he hit a bunch of whammies there.
Are we going to try that again?
Yeah, go ahead, Chico.
Okay, I was just going to say, it wasn't on my list, but it's not a bad show. It's a really good show and really, really solid half hour when it aired, and it was a really solid hour now on ABC. I didn't think they could make it into an hour. By golly, they made it into an hour. So yeah, just a really solid show. It just didn't make my list is all.
Sure.
That's fine. All right. Now, Mike, do you have anything to say about Press Your Luck?
Definitely not on my list. It's not one of my favorite shows, just because I want a little bit more meat on the bone than hit a button, win a prize. It's not really a mind-bending game. It's definitely not Jeopardy level. It does hold a place in my heart because, sort of in the same vein as Price is Right, it's one of those shows when I was in later in elementary school that, okay, you had Price Your Luck and then you had Price is Right. There's your sick day fully laid out for you. And it was even better if it was like a snow day or you had a parent sick with you. Because I remember there were times when my dad was sick or couldn't get to work because of snow issues. And same with myself and my sister. And we'd watch that hour and a half on a snow day. And we'd be laughing our butts off. I mean, Dad would have been probably 30 or so at the time, 30 to 35, and I would have been probably about 10, and my sister would have been about 5. And that was like the sweet spot of ages for people who remember Press Your Luck. If you were like a kindergartner, first grade, I mean, up to definitely high school and whatnot, but like that 5-year-old range, they remember those goofy animations and laughing at them, and it is a classic show, but again, I don't deem it necessarily worthy enough to be on my list. Not to sound elitist or anything like that.
No, that's perfectly fine. Your opinion's your opinion. All right, Chico, you only have one entry left on your list, so why don't you let us know what it is?
All right. Talked about Prices Right. Talked about Wheel of Fortune. Talked about Jeopardy. I do have one entry, and it's one that's been. It started out in the 70s, and it endures to this day. It thanks in no small part to the people they managed to get to play the damn thing, and that would be Family Feud. Because we all remember growing up with Richard Dawson kissing all the ladies, and answer some of the wildest answers coming from some of the quietest people that you're probably ever going to meet. And then you have the version that airs today with Steve Harvey, and not many people take what is supposed to be the contestants' moment of utter absurdity and basically play the Greek chorus. Because, love him or hate him, Steve Harvey is basically saying what we're all thinking. And it's that's the sideshow to the game, which is actually one of the most surprising games on television. It's like, okay, here's a question that we posed 100 people. Here are the answers. And you look at the answers, and sometimes you just have to say, that was an answer? And as silly as all that sounds, it works. And it still works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I had it as an honorable mention. Like you said, got really hot with Richard Dawson, and my earliest memories of the show is when Ray Combs hosted it. So I know Mr. Justin Rosero, if he's listening, will get a smile on his face. And then, like you said, the modern version with Steve Harvey has been a lot of fun too. And just some of the things some of those people say, you think to yourself, can they really say that stuff on television? It's just so interesting. Jordan, you had it on your Mount Rushmore as well.
I did. Yeah, I think this is a show that really relies heavily on the host. We mentioned Richard Dawson, of course, and Steve Harvey. I think Ray Combs is another good one. But then you had I feel like the darker years were the Al the Boar Borland. I can't think of his real name. The guy from Tool Time. Not Richard the best Karn. Host. Richard Karn and John O'Hurley from Seinfeld. I don't think they were necessarily great as hosts. But yeah, it's such a simple concept. Hey, what do you think are the most guest answers? And like Chico said, there's sometimes where you're like, really, that made the list? And then there's sometimes where it's like, this one didn't make the list. I do love Steve Harvey. The show at this point, to me, almost feels like a parody of the classic show itself, because I watch it and it almost feels like it's staged. They just give these people layup questions like, Sally, here's this, and there's the obvious dirty innuendo answer, and everyone knows she's gonna say it. We're just waiting to see how Steve reacts, and even though it feels kind of staged or forced to me, he's so good that I still laugh. I love Steve Harvey. I love his reactions. I love his responses. Maybe my favorite one is pork, you pine. That might be my favorite one of all time. But just he carries the show in such a way where it's not he doesn't overtake the show, but he makes it entertaining. He laughs at the bad answers, or sometimes he'll high five with the good answers. I think it's a show that really relies on a strong host. Richard Dawson, not anything really like Steve Harvey, but he was a very good host. I think Ray Combs is very good, like I already mentioned. And then we had a couple. And Louis Anderson, I don't really remember negatively about Louis. But
he was just there.
Yeah, exactly.
He was just there. 100 people surveyed. On the board, 5 answers. Show me waffles. What's your answer? Anyway, guys, you guys want me to do my Louis Anderson?
Oh, God.
But yeah, it's a good show. It's fun. I can't imagine who could come after Steve Harvey, because they're going to have to do it in a very different way. They can't have somebody come and try and be Steve Harvey again. But obviously he can't do it forever. So it'll be interesting to see when he steps aside how they continue on with the show.
Mm-hmm. It was not on Calvin's list, but Andy, do you have anything to add on Family Feud?
I mean, I grew up with Richard Dawson, with him, kissing all the ladies, and kind of didn't really watch the Ray Combs or actually much of the later years. I mean, Steve Harvey, I just think of Kenan Thompson now playing him on Saturday Night Live. Time to play the feud, when they do the Celebrity Family Feud, which is, I gotta say, Celebrity Jeopardy was, again, if we did a Mount Rushmore Saturday Night Live sketches, Celebrity Jeopardy, but their Celebrity Family Feud, not far behind. I think it's so much fun. It's not as funny, but it's fun because you get a lot. I love sketches that get like as much as the cast involved in it, doing impressions and parodies. So, I think Family Feud is a great show. And also the family, just how they interact sometimes, how they would get mad at each other. And back when it was Richard Dawson, they had to do that one pose as like a meeting and stuff like that. That was always a fun part of the show. And the audience too, with and Fast Money was always fairly exciting. So I see. It would be an honorable mention for me.
Mm-hmm. Mike, anything to add on Family Feud?
Nowhere near my list. Never been a huge fan of it. Back in the 80s, when I was a kid, loved the Richard Dawson version. Unfortunately, his version has not aged all that well. Never liked Ray Combs. Primarily, I think he had this sort of creepy foot fetish thing with the women where he'd wear their shoes, and that just didn't sit right with me. That was a little weird. Louis, this goes back again about 20 years. When I went to LA, I wanted to go see an episode with Louis because I've been a big Louis Anderson fan since probably I was like 8 years old, like 1983, 1984. Saw him have some sort of stand-up special on Showtime, and this guy's great. I want to go see him, and a buddy of mine who unfortunately hasn't been with us for almost 20 years, he said, you don't want to go. You think it's going to be fun. You think he's going to be funny with the audience. And Louis, all he does during the stop downs is he takes a smoke break. Very impersonal, very non-approachable. So you don't want to waste your time with it. And that's sort of like ripping the Band-Aid off. And it's like, okay, really, don't say this about somebody that I've enjoyed, watching do a stand-up for 20 years. Richard Karn, the less said, the better. John O'Hurley, I think, was the best host of them all. I could listen to John O'Hurley reading the phone book. He has just such a great voice, an aura of professionalism. I think he doesn't get the justice he deserves when it comes to hosting, especially since nowadays he's relegated to doing dog shows every Thanksgiving, it seems. And Steve Harvey, I tried it when he first started, could not get into it. And also, again, I taught at Steve Harvey's alma mater for 6 years, and Steve Harvey was supposed to go there, and he was supposed to help out the community and donate stuff to the school and whatnot, and he sort of blew us off. So for that reason, plus also his humor doesn't do anything for me. For those reasons, I cannot and will not watch the current version.
Interesting stuff there.
Plus, also, it's called Family Feud, and a lot of the answers nowadays are thinly veiled double entendres, which
I don't even think they're thinly veiled.
They're not family appropriate.
I'm not even sure if they're veiled at this point.
Hey,
thinly veiled.
Remember,
it's a very thin veil.
Yeah, just remember one thing. They didn't make up the answers. They came from a survey of 100 Americans. You blame those raunchy mother lovers, okay?
Yeah, but the thing is, the show doesn't have to necessarily put in the double entendres. They could do it differently than how they've gotten into in the past, like 7 years, 5 years. I haven't watched it all that often.
They're going for YouTube clips.
They're going for ratings. They're going for views. You're exactly right.
Yep.
All right. Well, Mike, we'll stick with you. Give us the final entry on your Mount Rushmore.
I went with Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. we look at it, and the original run only lasted for about 3 years because ABC basically killed the golden goose. Instead of making it event television, they showed it 3, 4, 5 times a week. But the syndicated version quietly ran for like 17 seasons. And they had a good complement of hosts. Started off with Meredith Vieira, who, again, is an amazing talent with anything she does. But then you had some rocky years where you had Cedric the Entertainer and Terry Crews, and ultimately you ended up on Chris Harrison, who, minus his current controversies, was a great host. And also it's such an easy game, but it's deceptively evil. Okay, answer 15 questions, we're going to give you $1 million. Oh, here's the catch. The first 5 questions are going to be really easy. The second 5 questions are going to give you a little bit of a challenge. And then the last 5 questions, you better be really good or really lucky or know somebody who's really good or really lucky. It's a brilliant show, but also if there's no Millionaire, you probably don't have any of the reality shows or any of the primetime game shows that we've seen over the last 20 some years at this point. It's beyond the game itself. It's how much of a landmark series it is in changing the scope of television. And also, I should add a little bit more of bias there. I almost got on Millionaire 3 years ago. Actually, they got all my information, my tax information. The only thing they forgot to do was call me. But from what I had heard, there was a lot of dysfunction in terms of the contestant process that last year. So if things bounced different ways, I probably would have gotten on the show, and who knows? It's nice to dream.
Well, that is a good choice. I had it as an honorable mention, and you mentioned all the hosts of the syndicated show. But for me, when I think Millionaire, I obviously will always think of Regis as the host, and I thought he was the staple of that show for the first when it was on primetime TV. And I mean, yeah, like you said, it should have been made, event viewing. It's like you got these people coming on that have a chance to be millionaires, and I remember there was a lot of buzz going around when I can't remember what the guy's name was, but the guy who became the first millionaire
John
off that
Carpenter.
show. Thank you. Yeah, when he actually won $1 million, and just so much. That was such a really fun, great moment, and like you said, then went to syndication and become was a daytime staple for a long time. So Calvin had it on his list. So Andy, anything you want to add on Millionaire?
Yeah, I would have had it as well. I could see this being Calvin's type of show because it was one of those where it was like, you knew, like Mike said, you knew the first 5, almost every one, and then the second 5 was like, you usually could know about at least 3 or so. Yeah, when the excitement you had when you knew one of the last 5, especially the $1 million question at home, me personally, I actually I had wanted to be on it, and one of my coworkers actually did it on the show, like did the phone thing. But the fact that my company was one of our owners was ABC, so we were ineligible because had any of us been on a show and won, we would have to give back the prize money. Because if you read the fine print where it says, if you employees or their household members are not eligible, so you got to read that stuff seriously when you work for a television company, which as I do. And no, but it was, there's Regis and it's just a good show. I had the CD-ROM game for my PC. I used to play it all the time. Only won $1 million a few times. It was just as difficult on there. But yeah, and ABC killed it. They had this great show and they drove it into the ground. It would still be around in prime time with a different host now, but I'm surprised they haven't tried to bring it back with this whole new summer thing that they've been trying, which bringing back like shows like Match Game, Press Your Luck, Hollywood Square, all these things that they're trying out, and because these are relatively cheap to produce, so in grand scheme of things. And I think we may see a Millionaire primetime revival, I think, before long.
I'm going to add an addendum because there is a Millionaire on right now, or at least a couple of months ago, Jimmy Kimmel hosted it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot. I didn't watch it, though.
From what I've heard, not many people did, so there you
go. Well, Jordan, it made your...
Yeah.
Jordan, it made your list as well.
Yeah, it did, and this is the one that I think I ranked this one more, not so much because I was a fan, but because of the impact it had. Like everyone's talked about so far, it was such a big cultural thing. Like it got monster ratings when it came out, to the point, like we said, they drove it to the ground. I remember there was one stretch where it was on, like, I think 5 days a week, like a week of Millionaire and stuff like that. It was just such a big deal, and for that reason, I had to rank it, like, to the point where, like, Andy mentioned, I think, Regis as the host that you always think of. But, like, I even remember, like, people would talk about, like, Regis's outfits, because he'd wear the shirt and the tie that were the same color. Remember, like, the tie was the same color as the shirt, and it kind of became like a fashion thing, and, like, it was just such a huge thing. And we mentioned the first winner, John Carpenter. It was such a cool way to win. He phones a friend, and he calls his dad, and he doesn't even ask a question. He goes, "Dad, I'm just calling to tell you that I'm about to win $1 million because I know the answer." It was so awesome. It was such a cool moment. But yeah, this one versus the other ones. The other ones I ranked because in my own life they're my favorites, or I have the best memories. This one I ranked because I think culturally it was such a big deal when it came out of the scene, and it spawned so many, like, imitators and things like that. And like anything in the media, you know, maybe got oversaturated to the point where, okay, it lost its luster. But that doesn't change the fact that for a while it was the hottest thing around. And you don't often see that with a game show being the hottest thing on TV, especially nowadays. So I had to rank it.
And Chico, you had it as an honorable mention.
I did. It was just, again, it's like everybody said, this was the impetus of new, more exciting ways to give away $1 million on television. Enter Survivor and The Amazing Race and all of that good stuff. But yeah, this was just one of those shows where anybody could go on and win a life-changing sum of money. Granted, they got a bunch of mogs, but that was just the fault of the system. Y'all know what a mog is, right?
Yeah, if you get them wet, they turn into gremlins.
An MAWG.
No.
Middle-aged white guys.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, Andy, Calvin had one more on his list, so if you wouldn't mind sharing that with everyone, please.
Yeah, Joker's Wild was his final one. Calvin being a gambler, I could see him putting a card game on there. I believe it was one where, if memory serves, you would pull a plunger basically, and or was that Joker? Maybe I'm getting those confused, but it had to do with the cards. I wouldn't have made my list personally, but I could see him being a big fan of that, so that's why he had it on his list. I'm saying.
All right. Anyone have anything to add on Joker's Wild?
Not really.
Chico? Mike?
Just one of my favorites as a kid. I could definitely see a 10-year-old version of me putting it on the list.
Same. One of my favorites as a kid too. And actually, it's like I actually enjoyed the newer version that they did with Snoop Dogg. With Snoop Dogg as host. I really liked that. But yeah, but yeah, I'll always be a Bill Cullen guy. So.
All right. Well, I have one more on my list, and this is funny because I think I'm going to make James Grunberg very happy with this pick, and I'm sure when Sean Kidd hears this, he'll probably put his fist through the wall. But obviously, growing up in the 90s for me, I was a Nickelodeon watcher, and in the 90s, Nickelodeon was great for two things: the Nicktoons and game shows. And one of my all-time favorite game shows on Nickelodeon had to have been Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Yes.
It's just such a fun show. You had all, 8 teams of 2, going through all these different challenges. Like they had to cross a moat, and then they got to the, where they were given the legend, and they had to answer questions, and they just go through all these different things. And then the best part about it was at the very end, when the last team remaining got to run through the temple, and them trying to get the artifact and get out of the temple without getting caught by the temple guards, just made for so much fun excitement. You had Kirk Fogg as the host, was so great, and then you had Olmec, the talking head, who kind of kept everything together. And I know for me, I was a big Blue Barracuda fan. They were always my favorite team, regardless of who was on. So I have such great fond memories of that show. It's just one of my all-time favorites. Does anybody have any opinions on Legends of the Hidden Temple?
Go ahead, Chico.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I grew up on Legends of the Hidden Temple. I always caught it during the weekends. I still have a Blue Barracuda shirt in my closet. I remember
Nice.
I remember a Halloween where I went as a Blue Barracuda. It's just one of those shows that developed a cult following and still has one to this very day. So yeah, it's just really good stuff.
Yeah, I didn't consider shows like this because for me, I think I would be tempted to list all kid game shows like Double Dare and, Funhouse and stuff like that. For me, my Nickelodeon show, though, would be Guts. I think I liked Guts even more than Legends of the Hidden Temple, even though I recognize that Legends of the Hidden Temple is maybe has gained the cult following and is still kind of more revered or revered, talked about and loved and stuff like that. But Guts was mine. I always wanted to climb the aggro crag. Any of those shows, like as a kid, who didn't want to go on those shows? That would have been the coolest thing in the world to go down that mouth on Double Dare, or to try to even listen to Olmec talk, or climb the aggro crag. Any of these shows, like a dream come true for a kid.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on Guts. Mike, Andy, anything to add?
When it first aired, I would have been college age / working full-time aged in my early 20s, so I didn't get to see it much. And I don't want to be the person to burst the bubble, but when I first saw the Temple Run, the first thing that came to my mind is, it's a derivative version of the Funhouse. Which it really is if you look at how it's sort of set up, and also remember that Legends of the Hidden Temple came from the same company that gave you Funhouse, Stone Stanley. But also at the same time, the end game, the Hidden Temple, is very derivative of almost every Stone Stanley show. When you look at Funhouse or Shop Till You Drop, running through the mall. Yeah. So I'm just like bursting that balloon right now. I'm terribly sorry. But I will say I came to appreciate it probably about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when it started airing in reruns on the old Nickelodeon Gas Channel, Games and Sports. And also, not to outdo you guys with your Blue Barracuda stuff, I actually own, and it's in the closet in the room behind me in my office, I own 4 game-used jerseys from the Legends of the Hidden Temple night from the minor league team down the street from me. And guess what? It's a Blue Barracudas jersey, all 4 of them.
Nice.
So those are my little trinkets that one day I'll put on eBay, and I'm sure there will be a bidding war because there's not a whole lot of those jerseys out there. But yeah, it has a place in my heart, albeit not from its original run, but from, again, like 20 years ago, 15 years ago. It is a great show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've actually never really watched an episode. It's a little after my time, being probably the oldest person here. So yeah, I really Double Dare, which I put in as an honorable mention, just so it would get mentioned tonight, is probably the only Nick game show that I really ever watched to have a frame of reference for. Physical challenge. Oh God, those kids.
Was that Louis Anderson who just asked?
No,
the physical challenge?
it was young Louis. Remember he had that
I'm
cartoon?
gonna go for the physical challenge.
Louis Anderson would have done horrible on Double Dare.
We're gonna do it.
Going through that hamster wheel, it just would have collapsed.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to catch the pies and not eat them.
Oh God. All right, well that concludes everybody's list. So now let's go through some honorable mentions. I have a few to mention. Andy actually took one of them already. Double Dare, another Nickelodeon game show I loved a lot. Nick Arcade, just because I'm
that was fun.
Just because I'm a big video game fan, I really enjoyed that one. And then one more, kind of interesting show. I don't know, I think everyone's mileage on it may vary, but that's of course the Newlywed Game. It's not one I watched a ton, but I know, you always have these couples come on that were just, recently married and, they get all these questions. And from what I've read about it, actually led to more divorces than, anything else. So I always thought that was very interesting. But, Chico, do you have any?
Place you made whoopee. Those kind of stupid questions.
Yeah.
In the ass! Sorry.
Okay. Chico, do you have any honorable mentions?
We already talked about Match Game and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I'm surprised nobody talked about Password, which basically was the genesis of the word association with celebrities. I mean, so it's basically Password begat Pyramid, Pyramid begat, yeah. But yeah, Password, Bob Stewart was an absolute genius when he came up with that word.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you had that as an honorable mention as well. Anything to add about Password?
Yes, Password. Actually, there was a couple of honorable mentions I didn't put on there, but I mentioned Hollywood Squares earlier. I mentioned Match Game earlier. And actually, Chico mentioned not just Password, but also Pyramid. Pyramid would be also on my honorable mention list. Password is just so timeless. And if you look at its history, minus the $1 million password from about 13 years ago, every single version of Password ran for like at least 4.5 years. The original version ran for like 6 or 7. And then there was the revival, which ran from like 71 to 75, and that was actually a topic that our show covered several months ago, I believe. The 1975 version of Password, trying to modernize it and make it a big money show, which was very convoluted. But then in the 70s and the late 70s, 79, you had Password Plus, which ran for about 3.5 years. And then Super Password, which is really the one that I grew up on. Password Plus a little bit too. I have memories of that, but Super Password was the big one for me. And that ran for almost 5 years. So you're looking between like 61 and 89. That's 28 years. How many years did you have Password there? Probably close to about 20 years. Because you had a 6-year run to start, and then you had 4.5 or so in the 70s. And then another 4.5 in the 80s with Super Password, and then about another 3.5 years in the late 70s, early 80s with Password Plus. So yeah, it's a timeless show, and it's still used nowadays in classrooms. I don't personally use it in my classroom because I'm not teaching basic vocabulary, but I know the Password format is used in the lower levels, and when students, young children, develop their vocabularies. That shows its timelessness right there.
Mm-hmm. All right, Jordan, do you have any honorable mentions?
Yeah, we mentioned a couple. Wheel of Fortune, Press Your Luck were on mine. I have 2, and I gave Andy my dead last game show, which I will talk about in a second. But The Chase is one that was an honorable mention for me. Just hasn't been on long enough, but I really like the concept of it, where it's 3 people who come on and do trivia together, and they have to play the beast. First, they have to beat him one-on-one to get to the final round, and then they have to basically out-answer him in time. It's a really fun show for me because it's like a trivia genius, and like the current version of it has Jeopardy champions, and I think they brought the big guy on recently. The big.
They did bring the big guy.
Yeah, I actually like him a lot. I think he's really fun to watch because he's like cocky. Like he plays a good like wrestling heel. You know what I mean? But it's a fun show. It's a really cool concept where you gotta not just be good at trivia, but be better than this ringer who's just sitting there mocking you if you get it wrong and taunting you and saying, I'm going to take your money. You're not going to win anything. It's a pretty fun show for me. It just hasn't been around long enough. I also listed Deal or No Deal. And the reason why is not because I enjoy the show so much, but I don't think there's ever been a game show where I actively root for people to lose like I do on Deal or No Deal. I don't know what it is, but I always want these people to fail. Like they get so greedy and so drawn out. I'm just like, I hope they lose. I hope it's $1 million. In that case, it gets open. Like it brings out the worst in me. So for that reason, I had to mention it. And then I sent Andy my dead last. I think the worst game show in the history of game shows, maybe the worst TV show of all time, is Minute to Win It. Like somehow blowing feathers in the air got put on TV. Like, and it's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen. So I had to list it.
Hey, Andy, you got any honorable mentions?
Oh yeah, I just have a few. Just to get them mentioned. As a kid, probably my favorite game show was Sale of a Century. I really loved that. Going once, going twice, no sale. I had the home version, which was one of the first home games that had a buzzer where it told you who buzzed in first. So I enjoyed playing that. Concentration. That was one where you had to like reveal parts of the board and you got like a Rebus puzzle. Those were always fun. Tic-Tac-Doe was another favorite of mine as a kid with the great Wink Martindale and the dragon would come up. Pyramid, we already talked about. Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Which is something I watched with my kids. Jeff Foxworthy was a fun host. The Gong Show, another one from my young years with Chuck Barris and Gene the Dancing Machine, the Unknown Comic. You had the same panel all the time: Jamie Farr, Brett Summers, whatever the hell her name was, and just egging them on to gong them. Supermarket Sweep, which now is on I believe Netflix, which I've watched a few episodes and kind of gotten back into. And then a show that I wanted to be on, but I never got the chance, Remote Control. I would love to see that come back. Ken Ober was great. It gave us really Dennis Leary, Adam Sandler, Colin Quinn, Kari Werher, and it was all stuff like I knew the answers to. Like I mean, I would do the best in this pop culture. Come on, I was part of the MTV generation, and that was designed for me. So yeah, I just wanted to mention those on this episode.
All right. Well, that was definitely a fun ride, guys. Some great choices. But right now we are going to take a little breather, get some regrouping here, because for the second half we are going to stop being polite and start getting real as we talk about reality competitions. So for Mike, Chico, Jordan, and Andy, I am Steve. This is Making Mount Rushmore, and we will be right back after these messages. And we are back, PTBN Pop Experience, with this edition of Making Mount Rushmore, where we are talking game shows and reality competitions. We have a great panel with us. Of course, we have Chico Alexander, Mike Klauss, Jordan Duncan, and Andy Atherton, who is pinch hitting for the Calvin Crowell. And we actually have a late addition added to the group today. He has joined in at the last minute to take part in this half of the show. You can hear him with Chico and Mike on It Was a Thing on TV. It is Mr. Greg Diener. Greg, welcome.
Oh, wild Greg Diener appears. Yeah. Sorry I was late. I I had other matters just to tend to. So
Hey, no problem, man. Sometimes life gets in the way, so you gotta deal with that. So for the second
Who
half,
said his name 3 times?
what?
Nobody gets the Beetlejuice joke? God, tough crowd tonight.
I was like, I got it. I'm just not copying to it.
Oh, okay.
Well, better you said Beetlejuice's name 3 times and not Biggie Smalls.
Okay.
Oh god. All right. Well, like I was saying, for the second half here of our show, we are talking reality competitions. These are those shows where ordinary people come on and they do crazy things for prizes and money, and those things that we all wonder if we should do ourselves or if we're just crazy or too crazy enough to do them. So we're going to start with Jordan on this one. So give us the first entry in your Mickey Mount Rushmore, and I think I have an idea what it probably is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of why Andy asked me to be on the show. If you know me, to the point where I get mocked for it now, I am a diehard fan of the TV show Survivor. I think Survivor is reality TV when I think of it. It's really, really good. I think it should probably be on most lists. If it's not on anybody's list, I won't hold it against you, but I will think you're wrong. But Survivor for me is reality TV. Like, I know there's other types of reality TV. I'm all about the reality game shows where people are eliminated. There's a prize at the end, things like that. And Survivor is kind of the blueprint for that, the one who did it best, the one who did it biggest. The best thing I can say about Survivor is the TV show Friends was a huge cultural thing, to the point where they just did this big reunion, right? Like, everybody heard about the reunion of Friends on HBO Max or whatever. When Survivor was in its prime, it aired against Friends, and it would beat Friends in the ratings. Like, it got more people watch Survivor than Friends. And what I think is even crazier about Survivor is that as Friends is doing their reunion episode, because 17, 18 years later, Survivor's still freaking on. Like, they're taping season 41 right now and 42. It's crazy to me that a show can have that many entries or seasons, and for me at least, and I'm sure I may be in the minority, I still watch it and I still enjoy it. In fact, season 40 is probably one of my 4 or 5 favorite seasons of the show. And if anyone's listening and doesn't know Survivor, it's simple. People get stranded on an island or a remote location. They're put into tribes. They have competitions. They have to build fire and find food. But at the same time, they really have to survive the social elements, because losing tribes go to tribal council, somebody gets voted off, and then at the end, these people that you're voting off and stabbing in the back and cutting throats, they get to pick who wins. So you have to find a way to maybe stab somebody in the back or break a promise or lie right to somebody's face in a way that they're still going to say, you deserve to win and get $1 million. And it's just made for so many great moments for me. There's so many classic moments, classic players, classic episodes, classic twists. I love it. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. Not just reality shows, favorite shows of all time, Survivor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had it on my list as well. Not a show I watched a ton, but again, just I think for the longevity of it, it has to be included as one of the greatest reality shows of all time. Mike, it was on your list as well.
Yeah, but I'm going to preface this with I have not seen an episode of Survivor since its second season. Unfortunately, I generally disapprove of TV shows where people have to eat things that I don't believe are intended for human consumption. And that was sort of the tipping point for me in season 2. But I put it on the list just because, sort of like Millionaire, if there's no Survivor, you don't have just about every show that we're probably going to mention in this episode. Mm-hmm. It was your show that sort of opened the floodgates for almost every other reality show, good, bad, or otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Chico, you had it on your list as well.
I did have it on my list, and I've been a faithful watcher ever since the first season back in 2000. What I like about this is twofold. First of all, it's like a human game of chess.
Yep.
It's like how and it's like an exercise in game theory. It's like, okay, how do I play this game to get me to the end? And who do I get to the end with to assure that I win? And how am I supposed to, basically manipulate or outplay my competition so I can get to the end. It's really fascinating stuff, but perhaps the most fascinating thing of all, Jeff Probst likes to put out fires with kerosene. And it makes for some of the best moments of the series when he does that. He knows exactly what buttons to push.
Yeah.
And I respect him for that.
Greg, it was on your list too.
Oh yeah, I did. You know, the best part about Survivor is how Jeff Probst milks, like, the whole vote thing, and how he just milks it all up. Just like this, like, the tribe is spoken and all that. It's so great.
It did not make Calvin's list, but Andy, do you have anything to add on Survivor?
Yeah, I could see Calvin not be doing that. I don't think Calvin would ever think about going on Survivor. I used to watch it a lot in the first, I don't know, 5-6 years it was on, to the point where we used to do a pool at work where we would put all the contestants in the hat and throw like $5-10 in, and basically whoever pulled the person that won got the kitty. And also I would work one night a week for a lot of years due to my job, and a lot of times I remember for early seasons it was the night the Survivor was on, so I would literally tape it on VHS and bring it to work because I had a VCR on my desk at work because of the nature of what I do, and I would literally go to work early and watch Survivor so I didn't get spoiled by anybody, because it was always, with the cubicle farm there, voices would carry. So you would hear a lot of conversations about what game last night and what show you watched. So I would be pissed off if it ever got spoiled. So it got to that point. But, it's a show that maybe I would revisit because I think, Jordan, a lot of the old seasons are on our streaming.
Hulu, I think, has
Hulu?
most of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something like, there's a term called slow TV, which is like, mostly I think comes from Europe, where it's something that you put on in the background while you're doing other things, and like you may look up because something will catch your eye, but generally it's like something that you don't really have to like put your brain into. You could do something else while you could work on your computer or your play on your phone, but you will kind of get the gist of what's going on and maybe catch something. So for me, yeah, it would be slow TV. Just throw it on like I do with the Food Network now. Basically, I would go back and watch the Survivors and try to catch up, because I did love Rupert, and a lot of those other early players were so great. So I would definitely have put it on my list had I done one proper.
All right. Well, why don't you go ahead and give us Calvin's first entry on his list?
I'm going to go with The Challenge, which I actually don't know much about. I don't know if anybody else put it on. I think there was, you heard a Pluto episode that may or may not air that he was on talking about that, but I apologize to any listeners out there that I actually don't know much about the show. I think I believe it's an MTV show. If I'm
yeah, it's an MTV show. It airs on Wednesday nights on MTV. It's actually the current version of what started as the Real World Road Rules Challenge.
Okay.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it's getting ready to tape its 37th season.
Jeez.
Well, let's talk about longevity. Let's talk about longevity.
Yeah.
A fun little twist with that is that the challenge, I don't watch it, but I've read about, they actually have former Survivor contestants and Big Brother contestants on more current seasons. So it's kind of like a little bit of crossover there. More Big Brother, I think, than Survivor, but I know there's been some crossover. People who are on the CBS reality shows get on the challenge. So, and to bring it all back to wrestling, Mike the Miz was on the early seasons of the challenge, since he was got to start from the real world.
Hey, Cleveland's own The Miz, isn't that right, Mike?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. Well, I did have it on my list. So, yeah, I remember watching some of those seasons back in like 2000, 2001. I was definitely into them at first. And, yeah, it's just kind of fell out of it. And like you said, now it's just like the fact there are any like Survivor people and Big Brother people just, makes it a little bit watered down. But, again, longevity, you have to speak for it. So, All right. Well, Mike, go ahead and give us another entry on your Mount Rushmore of reality competitions.
Okay. One on my list is American Idol. I'm not actually a big fan of American Idol. Generally, I stop watching after about the first month of each series, because the only reason I really show up is to, at least up until a number of years ago, I was just there to see the bad acts and hear Simon Cowell just berate the absolutely horrible acts. His acerbic wit is piercing. And again, like I said, usually that's done in the first 3 to 4 weeks of shows. And I literally check out after that point, because not that I don't appreciate the talent that's on TV, but I'm there for the comedy. but still, again, that sort of falls in the same line as Survivor, as one of those sort of legacy reality shows that if it wasn't for American Idol, you wouldn't have, say, for example, America's Got Talent, or you wouldn't have the X Factor, or you wouldn't have other talent/variety type of reality shows if there was no American Idol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I had it as an honorable mention. And yeah, like those early seasons, it was really all about seeing the bad acts and hearing Simon tear them apart. And it's funny. It's like for every Kelly Clarkson and Carrie Underwood that actually had a very successful career, you had a Taylor Hicks and other people that didn't have as, as successful of a career. But it was one of Fox's biggest shows when it was on. So you got to give it a lot of credit for that. Chico, it was on your Mount Rushmore as well.
It was, and it was one of those shows that in its early years, I had just come from 4 years of singing with the UNC Glee Club, so I could totally appreciate the musical aspect of it. The part that Mike tunes out for, I actually tune in for. And another thing is, the fact that it's live means that anything can happen. And, this is proven time and time again, where you see somebody who is destined to be the favorite to win it all, Jennifer Hudson, get voted out in the middle of the contest, and everybody's like, what just happened?
Yeah, I agree. Greg, it was on your list too.
Oh yeah, well, let's be honest. If it wasn't for this show, you wouldn't have your Kelly Clarksons and your Carrie Underwoods. I mean, this is probably the gold standard of competition shows in reality, and it's just an amazing show. And hey, Ryan Seacrest, this show made his career just like Wings made Tony Shalhoub's career. I had to get a Wings reference in it, Mike.
Yes, you did. Yes.
No, you didn't.
Does that mean that Ryan Seacrest is going to be the star of a cop show where he's got like obsessive compulsive disorder down the road?
No, that's Brian Dunkelman.
Okay, perfect.
No, I don't want to come back for season 2. This show's not going to do anything.
Yeah, right. Great choice.
Yeah, smart move on his part. Jordan, it was an honorable mention for you.
Yeah, kind of like earlier with the game shows. If we could do 5, it would be my 5th. And I just kind of wanted my 4th one that we'll get to in a few was just my personal favorite. But American Idol, kind of like I said with Survivor, kind of like we talked about Millionaire, just the cultural impact it had. It was such a huge thing. It spawned so many imitation shows, like I even think like So You Think You Can Dance and The Voice and like the Masked Singer, I think are all inspired by American Idol. And if that flopped, I don't think we'd see any of these shows. And not that I watch many of them. And I watched American Idol at the beginning stages. I would say maybe the first 5-6 seasons. Then I kind of fell off, and they brought it back. They changed. It went from Fox to ABC, I think. And I know my wife and her friend watch it, and I'll pop in a little bit here and there. I do like listening to the bad ones. The newer episodes don't really focus on the bad singers as much. It's more about like the tug at your heartstring stories, which are nice. But I like seeing the guy walk in full of confidence that sounds like possum being dragged down the road, you know. And personal story, a girl I went to high school with was on American Idol, and she was one of those not so good singers. She said she was a female boxer. Full reveal, she was technically, it's called Foxy boxing, is what she was. And she also said she was from the hood of the hood in Detroit. I
remember her.
Yep, I wasn't going to put her name out there, but if I give enough hints, if you saw it, you know who I'm talking about. She is not from the hood of Detroit. She is from the suburbs of Metro Detroit, just like I am. She lives in a nice little neighborhood and can't sing a lick. So, but yeah, I love those. I love those stories. I mean, what I think is funny about American Idol is some of the bad singers are more famous than some. William Hung is more famous than most of the good singers that have ever been on the show. You know,
William
right?
Hung.
Oh, God bless him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he had the greatest Christmas album ever, Hung for the Holidays.
Oh boy. Calvin did not have it on his list, but Andy, do you have anything to add on Idol?
Not much. I mean, he also gave us Chris Daughtry, which was a big thing. Guy turned down Fuel to be the lead singer after that, and rightfully so, and had his own career on his own. No, it's something I watched, but I wasn't like into. Like I watched it just because other people I knew watched it, like friends or whatever. And yeah, it was never really my cup of tea. Simon was Simon. You know, Paula. You know, he thought she was. Hitting the bottle a little before every episode. Randy, made him a household name. And Disney, built an attraction at the Hollywood Studios in Florida. A little too late though, because I think it was like on its way out before it got revived at ABC. And people would actually compete there and get themselves a Wonka golden ticket for the show. But I see where it's placed. It took Star Search to another level, it should be on these Mount Rushmores though.
Yep, I agree. All right, Chico, give us another entry on your Mount Rushmore.
All right, another entry on my Mount Rushmore. It's a show that was sort of born out of what would happen if you took the Survivor concept and doubled the players and took it on a world tour. And it gave you a tour of the world in 13 weeks, and you didn't even have to leave the comfort of your house. The Amazing Race. It was basically a thinking man's Survivor, because you have all of the, you have teams competing against each other, but at the same time, they're not really strategizing. It's all skill based. It's all merit based, and it's all about, okay, how are you going to get from point A to point B? And you watched it. You lived through the adventure. You saw these great vistas. It was one of the most well-produced shows on television, I thought.
Mm-hmm. I had it on my list as well. Not a show I watched a lot of, but again, when you talk about longevity, it's been on the air for quite a long time. So I think, maybe not as long as like Survivor or The Challenge and those shows, but it definitely has to be recognized for how long it's been on the air and how popular it's been. Mike, it was on your Mount Rushmore as well.
Yeah, if I could order shows, this would definitely be my number one show. Chico covered a lot of the key points to my argument as why it's one of the best, if not the best, in my opinion, reality shows ever. The production values are absolutely amazing. The contestant backstories for most seasons, not necessarily all seasons, has been excellent. Unfortunately, I think they've gone to the well one too many times with Boston Rob, if you remember him from Survivor. And they went to the well again once or twice too often with Flight Time and Big Easy, the former Harlem Globetrotters, and then bringing back, making it more or less a celebrity show. I think when you have the can't speak. I think when you have the civilians participating, it's a lot more fun, a lot more organic than having retreads from other reality shows on, or people who already have a modicum of fame. They're not average Joes like you and me. Also, as I mentioned for Survivor, usually when a show goes to eating things that weren't meant to be eaten, that's when I usually tag out. But Survivor is one of those that I haven't done that, just because I think they're so creative with the different events they have, and they keep every series fresh. But also, I do have a little bit of a bias because somebody I grew up with was actually on the 10th season of Survivor. Someone I grew up with was on the 10th season of The Amazing Race. Unfortunately, I think he was part of the first team to officially get eliminated before making it to the first official checkpoint.
True story.
He got eliminated halfway with his partner halfway through the first stage before officially getting to the checkpoint in that first episode, or the first 2-hour episode, or what have you.
True story. I was actually lab partners and good friends with somebody who was on The Amazing Race. I don't remember what season it was, but he was there with his sister. If you remember the dude with the dude with his sister wearing the Carolina cap, yep, that was the guy.
Plus, also, I had a rooting interest. I forget what season it was. I want to say it was, it had to probably have been somewhere around season 20 or so, maybe 18, 16. Steve Smith was participating in The Amazing Race, and at the time, Steve Smith was the third base coach for the Indians. So you had a little bit of a built-in rooting interest right there.
Just a little bit?
Yeah, got to root for the home team. Even if he doesn't live here, he represents Cleveland. And actually taking a look at using a term we use on our show, Truth by Consensus Wikipedia, season 16.
All right. Greg, do you have anything to add on The Amazing Race?
Hold on. It's just one of those shows that's just been around forever, and it's basically an exciting show. I mean, a race around the world. I mean, come on. What more can you add to that?
Mm-hmm. Jordan?
Yeah, it's a great show. It didn't make my list, but it's a really good show, and it's more where Survivor, the kind of the characters come out, and like you've got the Boston Robs, the Ruperts, the people who come out of Survivor, like Colby, are larger than life. With The Amazing Race, it's more the show itself, I think. As we're sitting here talking about past contestants, like I've probably seen these seasons, but I can't place the people. It's more about the show, which is traveling around the world, and it's just a really, really well done show. I think Phil is the perfect host for it as well, too. I think it's just a great job with Phil Keegan. I think he does awesome.
Oh yeah,
Andy?
Calvin didn't have it. I didn't watch it only because I had to draw the line somewhere. I was watching a lot of reality back then, Survivor and all that stuff, and I'm like, I can't. I need scripted. I can't just pace my whole television viewing around it. I've seen, clips of it. It looks good. Maybe something, again, like I would put on if it's on Hulu or something and just have it on in the background and kind of catch up on old seasons because I love the travel part of it. I think that would probably be my favorite part, just all the different locales and all the fun part of that. I'm not really, I wouldn't be in for the people necessarily. I just want to look at the exciting stuff. Like, I miss the Travel Channel when they actually would show travel stuff. Now it's all about ghosts and this other whatever bullshit they're airing now.
Yeah. I think all of the seasons are actually on Paramount Plus right now. So.
The one streaming service I don't have.
How are you gonna watch iCarly then if you don't have Paramount Plus?
I kick myself every day, Jordan, for that. I do.
There's always that one. All right, Greg, why don't you go ahead and give us another entry on your Mount Rushmore?
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go with The Mole. Now, this was a classic reality show. Ran for 2 seasons on ABC with Anderson Cooper and Chico. Like, was it 2 celebrity versions as well?
There was 2 celebrity versions, and then they brought it back with John Kelly for a season. And yeah, it's the show itself is really good. It's not on my list, but it's really good. It just seems like it was, I guess, too cerebral for the room. I mean, I dug it. You know I dug it.
Oh yeah.
It was just way too cerebral for the room.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Calvin actually had it on his list too.
Yeah, I could see. I've never watched it, but I read the description real quick while everybody else was talking, and I definitely could see him digging this show because one thing about him, he was very observant. He was very quick-witted, so I could see him like watching it and figuring out like if I don't know if they told you who the mole was or if did the audience know the mole or was it
they gave hints.
They give hints. So yeah, I could see him watching that and probably figuring it out before the end of the season. That just as much as I know about him. Anytime like I would mention something, he would jump on it. He was a very, like I said, a very observant and quick-witted guy. So I could definitely see him getting into the show.
Mm-hmm. Jordan, anything to add on the mole?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is I think this is a show that absolutely could be redone again. I would love to see the mole brought back.
Mike?
I totally forgot about the mole, and if I remembered, it would have been on my Mount Rushmore. It was too smart for the room, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, mind you, but the soundtrack to the mole is absolutely amazing, and actually it's commercially available. I'm sure it costs you an arm and a leg on Amazon or eBay, but the music for that show is absolutely amazing. Anderson Cooper was maybe the perfect host for that show. He had that role down pat. And I know Greg, this goes back about 20 years, but Greg had a certain fondness for Tiny Bubbles by Don Ho when they went to Hawaii.
Oh, yeah, because in one segment, they trapped the contestants in a room, and they played Tiny Bubbles by Don Ho.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a show that totally went under my radar, and if I had a mulligan on my list, a do-over, I would definitely put the mole on my list.
Same here.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and give my last entry on my list, and this show is probably one of the best shows going right now on TV. It just started its 20th season, and it's still very entertaining for me. I am, of course, talking about Hell's Kitchen. I've loved Gordon Ramsay. I think he is so funny. Just some of the stuff he says, and it's just seeing all these, chefs come from all different walks of life to come on and try to win whatever the prize is. Usually it's the head chef position at one of Gordon's restaurants, and it's always a $250,000 salary. And just seeing them go through all the different challenges and the dinner services and, just flying off the handle when things don't go right. And I always love these chefs that come on and think they're, hot shit and they know it all. And Gordon just absolutely humbles them to the utmost max. It's just such great entertainment. And it's just one of those, really good shows. And I actually do recommend anybody who does go to Las Vegas to stop by the Hell's Kitchen restaurant. I have been there, and it is really, really good. It's expensive, but I think it is definitely worth the price, in my opinion. Mike, you actually had Hell's Kitchen as an honorable mention.
Yes, I did. It's one of those shows that really has grown on me over the years. Gordon Ramsay is one of my favorite personalities. I loved him on Kitchen Nightmares. That was must-see viewing when it was on Fox like 8, 10, 12 years ago. I loved Kitchen Nightmares. But just continually watching Hell's Kitchen and seeing these, and I'm going to put air quotes over the word chefs, because I don't know if they're really chefs, because if you're truly a chef, why are the scallops always raw? And I just in the back of my head when I say that, I hear, they're raw! And you have chefs who can't properly make a risotto, which truly, I burn water and I could probably make a good risotto. It's almost comical how bad it is. And yeah, the new season just started. I saw the first episode probably a couple of weeks ago as we're recording this. And some of the dishes that they selected as some of the best were like the equivalent of like dog or cat food. I wouldn't even feed that to my cat. It's amazing how bad some of these chefs are, but obviously you need to separate the wheat from the chaff. Get rid of the horrible chefs, and then you'll have hopefully some talent left. But yeah, I absolutely love Hell's Kitchen. A great choice. It would still be my honorable mention if I was to redo my Mount Rushmore like I mentioned earlier. I would put the mole on there, and I'll mention the one that I'm would get rid of in a little bit.
All right, Jordan, you have anything to add on Hell's Kitchen?
Yeah, Hell's Kitchen is a show that I watched. Probably, if they're on the 20th season, I probably watched half the seasons, I would say. That's another show that I think is carried by the host. I mean, without Gordon Ramsay, you don't have Hell's Kitchen. And he kind of walks that fine line where he's very mean to people, but you like that he is. And honestly, if you see Gordon Ramsay off of these shows, he actually seems like a delightful person. Like, sounds weird, but Gordon Ramsay's TikTok account is actually pretty awesome. He like stitches and duets like people's cooking videos and offers tips and stuff. But yeah, he's a guy who's definitely carried the show. Kind of like what Mike said. Like, I'm a guy who like my cereal sets on fire, and yet I'll watch that show and make that guy's an idiot. He can't even make like a good risotto or anything like that. So it's kind of funny to see the pressure of that. It's always been an interesting show, but for me, I didn't list it just because all the seasons that I watched kind of blend together. Like, I couldn't tell you a winner of the show or anything like that. But it's fun. It's Andy, I think, used the term, was it slow TV? Andy, is that the word you used?
Yeah, slow TV.
That's a perfect example of a show for me where I can just put it on if I'm working, if I'm doing something else, and I don't have to pay attention, or I can tune in for a few minutes. Yeah, really fun show.
Fun fact, I actually have it on the background right now because it's got its own channel on Pluto TV, so that's pretty convenient.
I think Kitchen Nightmares does too. I think they both do.
Maybe I do.
Yeah,
Kitchen Nightmares is on the Hell's Kitchen channel.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Okay.
And it's also running on one of my company's channels on FYI as well. I don't know if we're running it at the moment, but we did air it for a while.
Right. Calvin did not have it on his list, but Andy, do you have anything to add?
My daughter, who's 19, watches it, loves Gordon Ramsay. Like, he's a lot like Simon Cowell, where you think he's being an asshole, but really he's being honest. He's not blowing smoke up people's ass. Like, Simon was himself, but he doesn't want to. Oh, you did great. No, you suck. You should go work somewhere else. Don't waste the next 10 years of your life trying to be a chef, because you just don't have that talent, or you're not a singer. That's really what Gordon Ramsay is. Yes, he is a personality. He probably, like The Rock says, turns it up to 11 a little bit, probably when he's on there. I wouldn't feed this to my dog. I hear that phrase a lot coming from, the TV in the house. But yeah, I mean, I think it's those shows are fun. And you could throw up any like those reality shows where people like compete. Not it's a different beast than like something like a Chopped, but where it's like you see like Worst Cooks in America, those kind of shows, because you can't believe people actually like don't know basic cooking, like couldn't even make a grilled cheese or something like that. It's like couldn't scramble eggs. It's just amazing watching these people. And how do you undercook scallops? Scallops are cooked so fast that they overcook so easily and become rubber. That's all I'm saying.
Chico, Greg, anything to add on Hell's Kitchen?
Just that, if I had to do it all over again, Hell's Kitchen would be on my Mount Rushmore. It is slow TV. I mean, you could turn it on at 8 o'clock and not miss anything until 8:45, where dinner's all done, for better or for worse, and you see who is in danger of leaving. And it is a show that Gordon Ramsay takes very, very seriously, and you rarely see that on a reality show. So, yeah.
Greg?
I got nothing more to add about Hell's Kitchen, but I think everyone has said what I have to say about Hell's Kitchen. It's Gordon Ramsay. What a talent.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's swing it back around to Jordan. Give us another entry on your Mount Rushmore.
So I'm going to do something a little different. When I sent my list to Andy, I'm looking at the list. I said, I actually did something a little wrong. We're talking reality competitions, and I submitted one that's not a competition. I actually put the Real World on my list, but the Real World's not a competition. So I'm going to amend it, and I'm going to say that I said The Amazing Race. So, yeah. I didn't catch that until I'm looking at it. And I'm sitting here thinking while we're talking, I'm like, the Real World is not a competition show. It was just plain reality. So I kind of got it wrong when I sent in my list there, guys. I apologize.
And
I can tell you my other one, though.
And you want to be my latex salesman. Jesus.
It's Gore-Tex.
Save Rental Industries! Save Rental Industries! Right, sorry.
Well, if you put Road Rules, you could say was a competition.
Yeah,
show,
absolutely
so
would not make that one wouldn't make my list though. So I feel like I'm gonna take my mulligan and I'm gonna say Amazing Race made my list. So boom. But I could give you my other entry. There is one more if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we all have guilty pleasures. We've all got some things that we like, and maybe we like it a little more than we should. I loved this show, and I'm sad because, and we'll understand why when I reveal the name, this show is not going to stream anywhere probably ever again. This show's probably not going to be on anything ever again. But if you want train wreck, mindless, often manufactured drama, The Celebrity Apprentice, holy crap, that was an awesome show. I loved The Celebrity Apprentice, and because, the host ended up being the president, and we won't get into that. Anybody's thoughts on that? We don't need those kind of debates. This is more lighthearted debate. I don't think The Celebrity Apprentice is going to be rebroadcast anytime soon, but man, when I want mindless, waste 2 hours TV, I want Meatloaf breaking down into tears because Gary Busey stole his paintbrush. That's what I want. I want Gary Busey being an absolute lunatic. I want LaToya Jackson fighting for her life against Dennis Rodman in the boardroom as Eric Trump stares off in the distance, having no clue what is going on other than the fact that there's cameras all over the place. The Celebrity Apprentice.
Avoid joke.
Exactly. So the Celebrity Apprentice for me was, and it is a competition. It felt so fake, and it felt so fixed and rigged and scripted, and I don't care at all. I loved it. It was like D-list celebrities walking around and Donald Trump would hype them up like they were the most famous person on earth, and they'd have to make sandwiches and sell them to people, and it's just so bizarre and stupid and hilarious. It's just like the perfect storm of all these little things that sound dumb, but you put them all together, and I just loved that show so much. And forgetting our opinions on him politically, they tried it without Trump. They tried it with Arnold, and it was not the same. Trump made it what it was, and I'm just sad that we'll probably never see it again, and we'll probably have to find it on YouTube or streams or something like that, because I don't think it's going to be on Peacock anytime soon.
Yeah, I didn't have it, but I definitely agree. And, even before The Celebrity Apprentice, you had the original Apprentice, where it was fine, everyday people. Yeah,
but Meatloaf and Gary Busey took it to a whole new level, man.
yeah, but like you said, it was that show was basically, it was all about Trump. He made the show, and he made, You're Fired a part of the lexicon of culture with that show is on the air. Anybody else have anything to say about The Celebrity Apprentice?
I may or may not have mentioned it on one of my shows, but I'm actually an Emmy voter, and I went to 10 years ago an evening with The Celebrity Apprentice in Manhattan, and they do these events during nomination periods, and it was the season that I believe John Rich won. You go in there, and they had a really nice cocktail hour and all that. Then they usually have a panel discussion. It was hosted by Jim Cramer, I believe. From he's on MSNBC or CNBC, one of those NBC things.
Oh, Mad Money or whatever.
Yeah, that. And the panel was Meatloaf, who I met, nice guy, Marley Matlin, Absolutely beautiful woman in person, very nice. Her translator though is like one of the Lollipop Guild. Then you got John Rich, super nice guy. Star Jones, cold as you know what. And then and then they had I think a couple of the other Trumplings were there. It was cool though. I mean, they gave us Trump water. It was an interesting night. I mean, I asked a question to the panel. I actually asked, my question was about Gene Simmons. Like, was Gene trying to get fired? And they're like, no, Gene thought he was right and would not budge on it. So, it was a fun show while it lasted. The show wouldn't be the same without Trump as the center of it, because he's just a caricature of whatever he was.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mike, Chico, Greg, anything to add?
Who's this Donald Trump guy you keep talking about? I only know the host is Mr. Black.
Mr. Black. I would say the best thing I can say about it is the less I say, the better, because
You want me to say something?
I knew I would be the only one who listed it.
I'm about to say something. The Celebrity Apprentice was a TV show on NBC that was The Survivor if it were held in New York City. That's all I can say about it.
Hey Chico, was it a thing on TV?
It was a thing on TV.
We love soft plugs here, guys. We love them. Tim Capel's the king of it, but you guys did a pretty good job.
All right. Well, Andy, why don't you go ahead and give another one of Calvin's picks?
All right. Nobody else had this one, so this is the one I will give. I could definitely see him digging on this, and I'm hoping it was the original in his mind, but he had Battle of the Network Stars. Who did not love this show? If you were a kid in the late 70s, early 80s, this was the shit. This was the show. You just saw Charlie's Angels going up against the A-Team and all. Yeah. And the fashion at that time was very conducive towards young boys' fantasy, so to speak, with some of these female celebrities. So I definitely could see a young Calvin definitely getting into the original, or he could have put the new one on. Who knows? But I could definitely see that, and it should be at least mentioned on the show.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was just about to say, I remember they did the joke on Saturday Night Live, Battle of the Network T's and A's.
Oh, yeah. Battle of the Network T and A's.
That was pretty...
The biggest T's and the baddest A's. It was like one of those like fake promo things, I think.
Yeah, it was, and it pretty much nailed down the allure of the Battle of the Network Stars. I mean, yes, Gabe Kaplan talked a good game, but everybody was there to see Farrah Fawcett and Catherine Bach and a nice pair of short shorts.
Adrian Barbeau, Charo.
Jordan, anything to add on Battle of the Network Stars?
I'm aware of it, but I don't think I ever watched it, actually.
Mike, Greg?
Battle of the Network T's and A's. That's all I got to say.
Oh, yeah. Battle of the Network T's and A's.
All right. Well, then we'll go to Mike. Why don't you go ahead and finish off your Mount Rushmore?
Okay. As I said earlier, if I could redo it, I would have the mole on my Mount Rushmore instead of this last entry. I was sort of desperate, grasping at straws for the last position here, and I put in Big Brother. Already I have regrets. Really, Big Brother, almost like Survivor, the first 2 or 3 seasons, loved it, but I think as I got older and the contestants got younger and more millennial, I'm like, nope, I have nothing in common with these kids, and they literally be kids because they're half my age nowadays. But the first season or 2, so many great characters. One character, I think, from season 2 that, oh my gosh, he was one of my favorite reality show characters ever, or personalities more than characters, is a guy that went by the name Chicken George.
Oh, that was first season.
Yep.
That was first season. But yeah, he was. I think I was legitimately crying when he got booted because he was the reason to watch Big Brother. At least again 21 years ago. But it's one of those that, like I said, the first 3 or so years of the show sort of put it in this position. I have not been a regular follower of it over the last 17, 18 seasons, primarily due to work schedules and just it's almost like as we mentioned about Millionaire earlier. It's just overkill when they show it 3 and 4 and 5 times a week, and then on top of that, for a while you had an After Dark feed on TV Guide Channel or Pop or whatever it's called this week, and I think Showtime had a After Dark feed for a while as well, and I think even at one point they had like a pay-per-view type of feed where for like $50 you got the entire After Dark feed for the entire season. It's too much of a good thing. I think it was, when it started out, it was, I don't want to say pure or whole, but it's just been like watered down since then. And like I said, I can't watch people who are 25, 30 years old who, not to stereotype, but are baristas or I'm just not that type of person. I'm 46 and I've never had coffee in my life. So I just can't relate to the people they have on that show nowadays. But Chicken George will live forever as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I had it as an honorable mention. And yeah, again, another show when you just talk about longevity that has to be included in terms of the reality competitions. Greg, it was on your Mount Rushmore as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can never... Mike, we can't forget about the first season without talking about the hot chick on Big Brother that Kenny Sheehan was so pissed they voted off.
Hey, Jordan, it made your list too.
Yeah, it's the last one on my list. This one I think is kind of like a sister show to Survivor. Like they kind of go hand in hand. In fact, Survivor contestants have, I don't know if a Survivor person has been on Big Brother, but Big Brother contestants have been on Survivor.
Yeah.
And Amazing Race kind of gets mixed in there too. I think this one doesn't age as well. Kind of like Mike was saying, like I watch it. I still watch it because it's on in the summer when there's not a lot else on. And I feel very old because it's a lot of Instagram, social media influencers now.
Yeah, that's basically what it's become. It's not like the original.
Right. Yeah, it feels like a show that's kind of lost its way. But those earlier seasons with like Dr. Will and Mike Boogie and stuff like that, and Janelle. Yeah, Janelle and Kaser. Those are pretty classic seasons. And the concept is cool. You know, I mean, you can subscribe and watch them literally all day long if you want. And even with the current seasons, I think that's almost became like the Big Brother fan base is pretty toxic. Like if you go on Twitter and do the hashtag BB, whatever season they're on, oof. Yeah, it's a mess. I still watch it mindlessly, check in, check out here and there. I don't care if I miss 3, 4, 5, because there's like 70 episodes in a season. It's on 3 times a week. I don't care if I miss half of them. You know, it's a summer show. You know, in that sense, it's fine. And it made my list because for a while it was a really strong show, but I think it's kind of fallen off, and I think it's lost its way. And I don't know if it's maybe can be salvaged. I'm sure it could, but I think maybe more diversity, not just, especially in terms of age, though. I mean, like it's just a bunch of young, dumb 20-year-olds who are there to, you know, fall in love and get followers. It's kind of what it is for me now. So
let's go with followers.
Yeah, exactly. So not a big fan of the current product, but a fan of the show overall. I think it's had some really, really strong seasons in the past, so it did make my list.
It made Calvin's list as well.
Yeah, I could definitely see him getting into that. Like I said, he's that observant type, and would he would. I mean, I don't watch it. It's not my cup of tea personally, a Big Brother, but I could definitely see him wanting to be a contestant on it and just blowing that shit up, just totally throwing it off because you would not be able to predict what the hell he would do in there. But yeah, I could definitely see him loving that show. Just a guy was studious, you know, a study of behavior and. he could pick up on cues. So I think he would know how to play people on that show. So yeah, I think a lot of his picks were stuff that like either he fantasized about being on or because like Battle Network Stars was so on brand for him to put on his list. But yeah, the Mole and Big Brother definitely are two shows that I think he probably would have wanted to be on at some point.
All right. Well, Chico, you are the only one that has anything left on your Mount Rushmore, so why don't you go ahead and tell us what that is?
This was actually something I amended when we were doing the game show part of this podcast. This is actually something that blends theater with the Survivor mold, and it is turned into a modern-day classic as far as reality competitions goes. RuPaul's Drag Race.
Interesting pick.
Yeah, it's sort of like a throwback to all of the camp of your Paul Lynns and your Jim J. Bullocks. Only, it has these people who take drag to an art form, and they're very, very good at it. And it is, it may look like a campy hour of television, but it's actually very well produced and very well done, and it caters to its audience and to a few people outside of its audience. So, yeah.
All right. Anyone have anything to add on RuPaul's Drag Race?
I haven't seen it, but it's a show that the fan base of it they're very passionate about it. Like they'll put it up against any other show. I've got a friend that I went to high school with that's on Facebook, and she just loves it. She'll post like reviews, and she absolutely adores the show. I've heard many, many good things. I just haven't watched it myself personally.
Anyone else? Sandy, Greg?
No, it's a well-made show, and it has its its audience. So yeah, no, I mean, I could definitely see people putting it on their list.
Same.
All right. Well, that concludes the main list. So let's quickly touch on some honorable mentions. I'll go first here. I had a couple of other cooking shows on here. I think we mentioned Chop briefly. I had that on my list. Also, another Gordon Ramsay show, Master Chef. I put on here. I think that's not. I don't have quite the same love for that one as I do Hell's Kitchen, but I think that's a really good one. Obviously, being a wrestling fan, you have to mention Tough Enough. Kind of the same thing, just a bunch of people trying to become a professional wrestler, and with a very mixed bag of results, probably more failures than successes, but it is what it is. And then another show that I'm actually a little bit surprised nobody mentioned here, Fear Factor.
Oh yeah,
that
Didn't
was
even
another.
think about that.
Yeah, that was obviously in the early 2000s. That was a pretty big show. I mean, kind of the same catalyst of like a Survivor and all those other shows. You had these people doing all these crazy stunts, and of course going through like weird things with animals that they hated, like spiders and snakes and all that stuff. So I figured that Fear Factor would definitely merit some recognition here. Jordan, do you have any other honorable mentions?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, man, I completely blanked on Tough Enough. That's a really good one. I might have even listed that one had I thought of it. And that makes me also think of The Ultimate Fighter, which is like the UFC reality show, which was pretty compelling in the early seasons. I think that's been brought back again recently. Maybe a show that had too many seasons, but the first 2, 3, maybe 4 seasons were really, really good. That's also when I was really into the UFC. I'm not so much anymore. And then one that I kind of had as an honorable mention, and I don't know if it really qualifies as a competition show, but it is in a way, is Shark Tank. It's not really a game show, but it's people trying to sell something, and they either win or lose, walk out with a deal, or they don't. I think Shark Tank's a fun little show, where people just pitch their products, and I don't know what other category it would fall into other than a reality competition of sorts. Shark Tank's been pretty fun for me.
Mm-hmm. Chico, you have any more honorable mentions?
Yeah, you mentioned Chopped. That's a really good, really solid show. I have to wonder, how long are they going to keep making these shows, huh? We mentioned America's Got Talent, which was just sort of the Gong Show taken to its reality show conclusion. Did not mention American Ninja Warrior. I mean, It was one of those shows. It started out as a sort of a cult classic on G4 as Sasuke Ninja Warrior, and then NBC got the idea to sort of bring it stateside, and it just absolutely blew up. And people just embraced the show, embraced the lifestyle. You see ninja gyms all over the place now, and you cannot deny that sort of impact.
Mm-hmm. Andy, do you have any honorable mentions?
Yeah, just a few that we didn't talk about, like Top Chef. I watched that a lot the first few seasons. Pack your knives and go. I thought it was probably excellent. Probably one of the best early cookie competition shows that's still on. Another show that we have to mention, or else we're going to get yelled at by a couple of the other hosts on this feed, The Great British Bake Off, which is a big thing for our friends on Telling T, Miranda and Ben. Also, my girlfriend Ellen loves that show. She watches it all the time on whichever streaming network it's on. Dancing with the Stars has had a big following there. I've been in and out on that. Watched it a little bit. A new show that I think could, my kids and I watched it the first season on Netflix. The Floor is Lava. It doesn't make a Mount Rushmore, but we do this in 5 years. They keep doing fun seasons. It's I actually kind of dug the show. We talked about Chico mentioned American Ninja Warrior. Nobody mentioned American Gladiators.
Oh, American Gladiators.
Back in the 80s, and they had such personalities. You had Zap and I don't know,
Nitro.
Laser, Blazer, Blade. What I know I sound
Gemini,
like
Lace.
I sound like White Goodman from Dodgeball, but and also a show that lasted one season, and I wanted to be on it so bad. And if they had gone further, called On the Lot, which was about aspiring filmmakers, and the winner, I believe, got a deal to work for Spielberg or something.
Wow.
I think they did on Fox for one season. My eyes were glued to the TV set because at that time that's what I really wanted to do. And yeah, it only made that one season. It was incredible. If it ever comes streaming, I'm definitely going to watch it again. But yeah, it's called On the Lot. Check it out if you can find it.
All right, well, guys, that was a really fun show. Talked a lot of great shows, both in here, the reality competitions and the game shows. But right now, let's go around the horn and talk about where everybody can find you in terms of podcasts and social media presence. We'll start with Chico. What do you got going on, and where can people find you?
I'm on all social media at Diener Alexander, and of course, I host It Was a Thing on TV with Mike and Greg, and also Into the Spidey Movieverse with Greg. We are going to be doing Amazing Spider-Man 2 very soon.
Very soon, and by very soon I mean August.
Yes.
All right, Mike?
As Chico said, I'm 1/3 of the dynamic duo. It doesn't make any sense. There's two people in a duo, but I'm 1/3 of the It Was a Thing on TV gang. I'm more or less the muscle and the financials behind it. Well, also I contribute, but it's my domain. It's in my name, you bastards. In terms of social media presence, you can find me on the IG, as the kids would say, and the Tweety box at That Mike Klauss. Elsewhere on social media, I don't even know what other social media presences I have. You'll probably likely find me under Ohio Math Teacher, OhioMathTCHR. And of course, as we mentioned, It Was a Thing on TV. You can find on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at It Was a Thing on TV, plus also our presence at itwasathingontv.com. New episodes get released every Monday and Thursday, and even sometimes more frequently than that. Please give us a follow, a listen, a like, ring our YouTube bell, dingy, 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 and we'd appreciate it if A, you listen to us, but also B, if you gave us some positive feedback on Apple Podcast and similar services.
Because positive vibes.
Good karma, exactly.
Sure.
All right, Greg.
No, I'll just say what they said. It was a thing on TV.com and our socials at it was a thing on TV. So we got some good stuff coming lined in the pod fun Place to Be Nation, especially one episode, Mike, that we just recorded.
Yeah, just recorded this weekend, and actually by the time this airs, it would have been released on the 1st of July, this coming Thursday. Regarding back in the early 70s, there is a 1-minute segment on TV every night called the Bicentennial Minute. And this show is ran almost 2 hours long and may even run longer once Greg does what he needs to do to that episode. But truly, it was one of the most fun, one of the most entertaining, one of the most informative episodes we've ever done. Right. It really was. We've done over 200 topics at this point, I believe, or close to 200 topics. And this, I would say, is our number one show right now. It was absolutely perfect, I think, in every regard.
All right. Jordan.
Yeah, so you can find me my new project. It wasn't a thing on TV where I review old-timey radio shows. No, not really. I'm over on the North-South feed doing Rank and File. We've been doing greatest TV theme songs. We've got a couple more episodes to go. After that, we'll just get back to our usual pop culture stuff. And Andy and I are finishing up our pop culture trivia night tournament. We are headed to the championship round. I'm excited about that one, and I'll turn it over to Andy as he can kind of fill us in, because Andy's on a billion shows.
Yeah, well, the possible winner could be on the show tonight. Greg is one of the finalists. So, I'm doing that later this week. Yeah, sure. Yes, it's Greg, Ryan Everett, and Robert Hawkins. So should be a great matchup. We're really we're very excited. Me, Jordan, and Mike. We spent a lot of time discussing and building the show, and we couldn't ask for a better final. So we're really looking forward to it. Right. And it will have aired by the time you hear this. So either congratulations, Greg, or sorry.
Whatever.
But as for me, you can hear me. This is my primary home. This is the place I run. Lots of shows. We got the Pop Goes to Classics Disney. I do with Steve and Miranda. I have the most sensational, inspirational, celebrational, motivational podcast that I do with Miranda. That drops monthly. Blockbuster Rewind, a new episode. Will have dropped by the time you hear this. That is the Pirates of the Caribbean. It's myself, Scott Shiflett, and Eric Eels. We talked about the in-depth on the first few episodes and really just skipped and glanced at the last two, because that's all you really should do. Miranda was our guest on that as well as, and then on the Wrestling Network, you have the sister show to this, the Making Mount Rushmore Wrestling Edition. Great debate. We'll be back, both versions, hopefully before long, as well as Evolution. Where's the deep dive into a wrestler? Check out PlaceToBeNation.com and the Facebook group, The Place to Be.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, as Andy mentioned, I am one of his co-hosts on Pop Goes to Classics along with Miranda. Our most recent episode dropped recently on the Aristocats. That was a lot of fun. So they're coming up next will be Robin Hood, which I actually hosted because it is one of my favorite movies of all time. So looking forward to that. I'm also regularly here on Making Mount Rushmore as a panelist. The most recent one before this was on TV and Movie Dads. That was a lot of fun. And Andy also mentioned the wrestling version. I was on the most recent episode of that as well. Me, Ben, and Logan, we talked NXT TakeOver. We talked about the best matches from TakeOver history and the best TakeOver shows from history. So that was a lot of fun. Check that one out. You can find me. Usually I'm on PlaceToBeNation.com. I have several regular articles that go up there. The Vintage Vault previewing, the box office report, and my wonderful reviews of Disney. The entire catalog is up on there, and of course my wonderful list of Disney is ongoing. I'm nearing the end of the songs, and I am of course we'll have the movies, and that will be the last thing. So you can also find me over at Place to Be Nation Facebook group, as Andy mentioned. A lot of great discussion and all that stuff going on. So a lot of great stuff there. So gentlemen, thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Mm-hmm. Steve, great job. And before we go, I just want to say, remember our friend Calvin We're going to miss you. Thank you for your contributions and being part of the Place Nation family. Rest in peace, my friend. We'll see you when we see you.